Welcome guys to an all-in-one full crash course on Python. This is Kishore and I will be teaching you from the very beginning of Python to the advanced level. In this course, I will be using the Visual Studio Code for running outer programs, and the link for you to download will be provided in the description of this video. I will also provide the link to how to download the Python IDLE. So grab your snacks, sit tight and have fun. Now let's take a look about our first program in Python, and it's obviously the hello world. It might seem quite boring, but it's important to know what's happening within the code. Now before I start to explain what's happening, let me show you the output of this code, and it's the hello world. Now let's take a look on the code. It contains print, a pair of brackets within which we have our double quotes, and hello world is present within the double quotes. Now let's learn what is happening in here. The first is print statement. The print statement is used to display any statement which is present within the double quotes. The print statement can also display variables, the value of variables. It can access the value of variables and show it in our output. Now let's know what are variables. Variables are like placeholders which are used to store values within them and can be used in various parts of our coding. Variables can be of any name. It's up to the coder's wish. We should always name a variable a reasonable one. So if other programmers come to visit our code, they should easily recognize what this variable is holding. We should not use keywords as variable names. Now let's learn the difference between variables and keywords. These are the points which I have showed in the previous slides to you. Now let's take a look about some of the examples of variables. So name, age, these are the variable names commonly used. So name is used to refer that this variable is holding a name of a student or an employee or something, and age resembles that this variable is holding the age of a particular person or something. Now on the other hand, let's take a look about the keywords. Keywords are like special words which are used to perform specific tasks in a program. So since they are performing specific tasks, they can't be included in other parts of our program. Otherwise, the compiler will get confused to recognize if it's a variable or keyword type. Now let's take a look about some of the examples for keywords. The for, while, def, class, etc. are the keywords. For and while are loops, which I'll be explaining in the later part of our session, and def is used to define a function or something, and class is a bunch of code and it can be used to be called again and again in various parts of our code. Don't worry, I'll be explaining everything of this in the later part of our session. Now with that being said, let's head over to our code editor and let's see how variables work in Python. Now I have created a sample Python file with a .py extension which resembles that it's a Python type of file. So here let's create an addition program with variables. So let me give a variable name as number 1, and it contains a value of 10, and my second variable, which is number 2, contains a value of 20, and my third variable, which is number 3, contains the sum of number 1 and number 2. Now let's use the print statement to see the output. So print within the double quotes, let's give the sum of number 1 and number 2 is. Now since this is present within the double quotes, it's going to be displayed in the output. And to access the variables, let's give a comma and name of the variable to be accessed. As you could see, the number 3 isn't mentioned within the double quotes. So the number 3 is not going to be printed in the output, but the value of the number 3 is going to be printed. So let me save this file and run this code. You could see the output over here. The sum of number 1 and number 2 is 30. So this is how the variables work in Python. There is another method to use the same program. So let me remove this line and I can do the addition function over here. So number 1 plus number 2. So let me save this and run, and you could see the output is still the same. These are the various methods how you could use your variable in Python. So the next part we are going to look at is indentations in Python. So what's indentation? One of the most unique features of Python is its use of indentation to mark block of code. Each line of code must be indented to the same amount to denote a block of code in Python. Unlike most programming languages, indentation is not used to make the code look pretty. These are very essential one. Indentation is required to indicate which block of code the statement belongs to. So improper indentation may lead to unwanted error. So I guess you understood about indentation. If not, don't worry. I'll teach you about control flow in the next chapter, and you will come to know about the importance of indentation through it. Now let's learn about control structure in Python. So what's control structure? It's a decision making process which is used in the Python programming. So it's just a bit of code that analyzes the value of variables or other operands, and the compiler decides the direction to go based on the given condition. Actually, in Python there are two types of control structure. One is the selection and another is iteration. So what's selection and iteration? Selection statements allow programmers to check a condition, and based on the result, the compiler will perform different actions. There are two types of selection statements, the if and if else. On the other hand, the iteration statement is something which enables us to execute a single or set of programming statements multiple times until the given condition is satisfied. Here, the for and while loops are the constructs for the iteration statement. Now let's back to our code editor and learn about selection and iteration statement. Let me remove these 3 lines of code and mention that this is a selection statement and this is a if statement. Now these 2 lines are comments, which means these 2 lines will not be recognized and read by the compiler. And all you have to do to comment a line is just use an hashtag. Now let's head to our program. Now let's create a Python program to display valid in the output if the age is greater than 18. So let me create a variable name as age equal. So let me give some value as 19 and use the if statement. To use the if statement, just type if and within the brackets just give the condition for f. Now our condition in this case is the variable should be greater than 18. So if age is greater than 18 and use your colon, and all we have to do is print valid. Now as you could see that there's a space over here, and this is what I called as indentation, and these two lines are a block of code. Hope you guys are clear with indentation now. Now let's save this file and run our program. As you could see, valid is printed the output, which means that the condition is satisfied over here. 19 is greater than 18. Now what if we give the age as 10 and run our code? As you could see, there's no output displayed in the area, and this is how the if statement works. Now let's talk about if else statement. So let me mention that this is a if else statement. Now let's create the same code. So age equals 10 if age greater than 18 and valid, and else print not valid. As you could see, there is no condition mentioned over here. This is because only the if part contains the condition. If the condition is satisfied to be wrong, then it automatically comes to the else part. So there's no need to create a condition in the else block. Now let me save this. Before running, let me comment this out. Let's save this once again and run our code. As you could see, since the age is 10 and it does not satisfy our if condition, the output has become not valid, and this is how the if else block runs. Now let's talk about the iteration, which means the for and while loop. Before that, let me remove all these code, and let's tell this is an iteration statement and this is a for loop. Now I'm mentioning these commands just to help you guys recognize what type of code I'm going to input. Now the for loop allows us to execute a code block for a specific number of times until the condition is satisfied. Now let me define an array. So the name of the array would be numbers equals one, comma 2, comma 3, comma 4, comma 5. So now this is a list and the values are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the name of the list is numbers, and let's use the for loop. So for I in numbers and print I. Now let's run this code, and you could see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all are printed in subsequent lines. Now what's happening in this for loop is the I is being printed the number of times the elements present in the list. So there are 5 elements present in the list, and each time the I is being printed, it takes the value of the element present in the list. So it takes 5 values each time, and this is how the for loop is being executed. Now let's try bringing the same output using the while loop. So let me change this to while, and let me erase this, and let's create a variable, say I equals 1, which is the initial value of I, and let's use the while loop. So while I less than or equal to 5. Now this is the condition, and out here let's type print I, and let's increment the value of I each time it passes the condition of while. So I equals I plus 1. So as you could see, at the first time of compilation, I, which is 1, is less than 5, so I gets printed and I gets incremented by 1 and goes back to this line. And now 2 is less than 5, the condition is true, it's get printed and it's get appended. Now let's see how it runs. You could see that the same output is being displayed over here. Now this is how the while loop works. Now let's learn about input statements in Python. So what's input statement? As the name implies, the input statements are used to get input from the user. It can be of any type. All you have to do is just mention the type of input you need to get from the user. To get the input from the user, all we have to do is use the input keyword. Now let's head back to our code editor and use this input statement in our code. Now let's try implementing the input statement in this code. So without mentioning the value of I to be 1, let's get the value from the user directly. So for that, let me remove these lines, and over here I equals, first we need to mention the type of input we are going to get. So let's get an integer type of input, int, and within which we use our input keyword, and let's type the statement we want to be displayed. So enter an integer. Now let's save this and run our code. As you could see, there's the statement over here, and it tells us to enter an integer. So let me enter 2, and when I enter, you could see 2, 3, 4 and 5 printed. So this is how the input statement works, and the input statement will be very useful in the upcoming sessions of our tutorial. Now let's talk about indexing. This indexing topic will be very useful throughout the course. So what's indexing? Indexing are used to access values from arrays, lists, tuples, sets, etc. Now I know that you have a big question mark about what's list, tuples and all these stuffs, but don't worry, I'll be teaching in later part of this course. For now, let's focus on indexing. So once again, they are used to access from these arrays list. So generally there are two types of indexing. They are the positive indexing and the negative indexing. So what's the difference between these two? So as the name implies, the counting of positive indexing starts from the right and the value starts from 0. On the other hand, the counting of the negative indexing starts from left and the index starts from -1. Now let's encounter this example. As you could see, there are 5 blocks over here and each block consists of a value. The first block consists a letter P, the second consists a letter R, the third consists of O, the fourth B, and fifth consists of E. Now this array consists of 5 blocks, which means that the length of the array is 5. Now talking about index, the first thing is the positive index, and as I mentioned earlier, the positive index starts from 0 and it starts from the right. So the first block, which consists of P, and since it's right, it consists of the index 0. Then the next block, which consists of R, consists of the index value 1, and so on up to 4. As you could see, the index value starts from 0, so it can go up to 4, and the length of the array is 5. So for quick calculation, you can just subtract 1 from your length to find the maximum index of your array or list or something else. Now talking about negative indexing, which starts from the left and index value starts from -1. So E ultimately gets the value of -1 and B gets the value of -2, and so on. Now this is how the indexing works. Now that we've mastered the concepts in indexing, let's head over to list. But before I start about list, let me tell you guys that list, tuple, set, and dictionary are the 4 basic data types in Python. They are all the same with slight modification, and you will get to know about it later. So jumping back to list, they are mutable, which means that the value of list can be changed at any part of the time. They are ordered set of elements, which means even if you input in order or random wise, they'll be ordered while processing. And you can also have the same element many times as you want in your list. They'll be using the square brackets, which you need to know because it's one of the difference between the list, tuple, sets, and dictionary. Now that we've learnt about list, let's head back to our code editor and work on list a little bit. Now as you could see, I have created a new file named as list.py, and I'll be using this file to work on list. So let me create a list with a name as A. Now this is a variable and the name of the variable is A. It's holding me a list within these square brackets. So let me now include my values in my list. So the values would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now let's say that I need the value 4 to be printed in my output, not the entire list but only the value 4. So this is called accessing members of the list, and this can be done using the index value. So as you could see, the index value of the element 4 is 3. So let's print it out using print name of the list, which is A, and within the square brackets just give index value of the element we want. So it's obviously 3. So let's save this and run. You could see the element 4 has been printed out. Now this is how accessing elements in list works. Now let's know how concatenation works. concatenation is nothing but merging two lists into one. It's just a simple addition formula. So let me create another list named B, which will hold the values of 6, 7, 8 and 9. So now let me create another variable named C, which is used to concatenate the previous two lists. Now let me print my third variable, which is C. So if I click on run, you could see that both the list has been merged into a single list, and this is how concatenation works. Now that we've learned about concatenation, let's learn how the append keyword works in list. Now append is something that we can use to add an element in the end of a list. Say if I need to add an element 10 over here after 9, I can use the append keyword and do it. So let me show you how it works. All we have to do is type the name of the list, which is b dot append, and within the brackets just give the element. So I need to have 10. Now let's try printing it. So print b. Let me save this and click on run. You could see now this is the list B, and the value 10 has been appended at the end of the list after the value 9. Now this is how append works. Say you don't want your element to be placed over last, so if you need to place it in a specific place, you can use the insert keyword. So let's try using it. So b dot insert, and now you have to give two values. First value is the index where you have to place your element, and the second is the element itself. So let me remove this and say I need to have my element 10 between 8 and 9. So the index value of 8 is 2. So after 2 I need, which means 3. So 3 is where I need to be placed, and the element is 10. So let me print it out and let me save this and run. Yeah, you could see the element 10 has been placed between 8 and 9. Now this is how the insert keyword works. So now if you need to remove an element from your list, you could use your remove keyword. So let's take a look. Say if I need to remove the element 3 from my first list, all we have to do is type a dot remove the element itself. So let's save this and let's type print a. So let's save and run. As you could see that this is the first list and the value 3 is missing. Now this is how the remove keyword works in Python. So congratulations, you've learned how the list works, and you'll be using it through the entire course. So learn carefully and work out many programs as you go over list to master it. Now let's talk about tuples. Tuples are immutable, which means the value of a tuple cannot be changed. And tuples use curved brackets. So now let's head back to our code editor. And now let me create a new file named tuple.py, and let me create my tuple. So a and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this is my first tuple, and let's try doing the same as we did in list. So let's try printing the element 2 now. So print a, and the index value is 1. So let me save this and run. You could see 2 has been printed over here. Now let me just close this and click on run again. Okay, so delete it. Yeah, perfect. Now this looks nice. Now let's try printing out the length of my tuple. So for that, let's try print and length keyword, which gives us the length of our list or tuple or anything we need. So length and the name of our tuple, so it's a. Let me save this and click on run. You could see 5 over here, which is the length of my tuple. Now before I proceed, let me head over to this part, which is our list part, and let's try changing a value in list. So say we could change. So before that, let me create another list. So the name of that would be my list, and it consists of, say, apples, banana, and cherry. So there are 3 elements in my list, and now I just have to change the second element, which is banana, into orange. So all we have to do is, let's do this. So it's my list, and now the index value for banana is 1. So now within the double quotes, let me change the value. So it's orange. Now all we have to do is print the list. So it's my list. Let me save this and click on run. As you could see, the value of the list has been changed from banana to orange. This is how changing values or changing item from list works. Since lists are mutable, things can be changed in list, but you cannot do the same thing in tuple since they are immutable by nature. Now you could perform some operations in tuples which you performed in list. Say you can access the elements in tuples and list as we did over here, you could find the length of your tuple or list. You could also concatenate and append, but sorry, you couldn't append in a tuple since they are immutable in nature. But you can always concatenate two tuples into one. So before that, let me just delete it and click on modify so that it looks neat. Yeah, okay. Now let's see how repetition works. Repetition is something like showing your tuples or list any number of times you need, just for fun. Okay, so repetition works like this. So print the tuple name into a number of times you need. So say if I need to print my tuple 3 times, save this, and here you go. Your tuple has been printed out 3 times. Now this is how repetition works. Now let's head over to membership. So membership is something like if you have a specific element in your tuple, a specific task will be performed. So it's just like an if-else loop. So let's try working it up. So if three in A or say if we just create another tuple like we did in list. So it's my tuple and the value should be apple, banana and cherry. So let's try working with apple. So if apple in my tuple, here the in is used as membership keyword. So if the apple is present in my tuple, let me print out yes, else print no. Now let me run this and you could see a yes printed out here. Now this is how the membership works in Python. Now that we've completed about list and tuples, let's head over to set. So what's set? They are immutable, which means that you can't change the value of the elements in set, and they are unordered collection of elements, which means even if you give the input in one order, the output will not be the same as the order in the input. So it will be in a random order, and that's how the set works. And for set we use curly brackets. You have to know that we use curly brackets even in dictionaries. You will get to know about that when we head over to dictionary. So now that we've learnt about set, let's head back to our code editor. Now let me create a new file naming set.py, and yeah, let me create a simple set. Say a equals, I have my elements named as apple, banana and cherry. Now first let's print this set. So print of a. Let me save this file click here, and you could see the set has been displayed in the output. So now let me use the update keyword. So the use of an update keyword is the same as concatenation that we did in the list. So let me create another set, say B, which contains the elements I will be having here is mango and grapes, just fruit names. So now let me concatenate these two sets using the update keyword. So to do that, all we have to do is look, I'm going to include these two elements in my first list. So that's how the update keyword works. So the first list name dot the update keyword, and within the brackets I will be giving the second list name, the set name. So now let me print A. So let's save this and click on run. Now you could see that all 5 elements have been brought into a single set under the set A. Now if you take a closer look over the output and see over here, the order is apple, banana and cherry, but over here it's apple, cherry and banana. Now this is how the unordered set works. So even though if we give the input in an order, the order will not be proceeded same in the output. Now let's move on to the next function. So what I am going to do here is, let me remove one of the values from my set. So to do that, I will be using the remove function. So a dot remove, what can I remove? So let me remove the apple from my set. So apple, let me print my set. Let's run this, and you could see the apple has been removed from the set A, and here you could see that the order has been changed again. Now this is how the remove function works on the unordered list. So there's another keyword called as clear, which is used to clear all the elements present inside the set. So let's use this. So a dot clear, this line indicates that the value present in A, that is banana, mango, grapes and cherry, all the values will be clear and the set will be empty. This will not delete the set, but only deletes the elements present inside the set. So to clarify it, let me print the set and show you the output. You could see that only set is being printed. This means that all the elements present inside the set has been cleared. Now if you want to delete that set, all we have to do is use the del keyword. So I want to tell my set A, and now let me print A. Now this will going to show me a beautiful error. As you could see, name A is not defined, which means that the set A has been completely destroyed or deleted from my Python. Now this is how the del keyword works. Say if you want to know the length of your set, you can always go for length keyword. So since we haven't touched the B set yet, so let me use it. So print length of B. So let's say this and click here. Now the length of the set B is not being printed since there's an error on the line 11. So let me take this line from here and let me use it somewhere else in my code. So say let me use it in this line. So I'll be saving it, and when I run, you could see the length over here. So you could see there are two elements in my set B and the length is showing as 2. So these are some functions implied with this set, and you could head over to W3 schools to know more about sets and how to access these elements more clearly. Now let's talk about the last part of our data type, which is dictionary. So dictionaries are mutable, which means that the value present in the dictionary can be changed or appended or accessed, and they are unordered collection of elements, which means they are same to as how we discussed about the set in the previous chapter, and they cannot be accessed via indexing. Other three sets, tuples and list, can be accessed through indexing, but dictionary is something special apart from these three. They cannot be accessed via indexing, but there is a way to access the elements present in the dictionary. You could see that the dictionary stores data values in key value pairs. Now I could see that some of you would have a doubt about the key value pairs, or you couldn't understand it clearly. Don't worry, I'll be heading to the code editor and I'll be showing you how it works. So the last part is, I said before that the dictionary as well as the set uses the curly brackets. So with that being said, let's head over to our code editor. So now let me create a new file named dictionary.py. So over here, let me create a dictionary named mydict, and use my curly brackets. And as I mentioned earlier, dictionary uses key value pairs to store data values. So which means that you have to give a key and a value to that key. So let me create an example. Let's assume that we are going to give the values for a car in this dictionary. So first element, so let me give the first key as brand. So the value for this key is Ford. Okay, now my second key would be model, and the value for this key is Mustang. and let me create another key value pair, say here, just 1984, some random year, maybe, I'm not sure about it. So now let's try printing this dictionary out. So print ID. So let's save this and click on run. You could see that the output has been printed out over here with the key and the value of the key. So let me delete it and click on run again. Yeah, now it looks neat. Now this is how the dictionary works with the key value pairs. So I guess now you got a clear shot of how it works. So now let me try printing the length of my dictionary. So print length of my, you could see that the length of my dictionary is 3, which means we have 3 key value pairs, and that's true. So now let's try adding another key value pair to my dictionary. So to do that, all we have to do is type out our dictionary name and use the square brackets. So you could see all the key present in my dictionary has been popped out. So now we could add another key, say colors, and the values for my key will also be present inside the square brackets and within the double quotes. So let me give white, black, and gray. So 3 colors present for my car, and now all we are going to do is print the dictionary once again to check if we've done everything correctly. So now let's save this, and you could see the brand, model, year, and our colors are also being added to my list or dictionary, sorry. So this is how adding keys and values to our dictionary works. So say if you want to delete some key value pair from your dictionary, we can use our del keyword. So say if I need to remove my year key value pair, all I have to do is type del name of my dictionary and within the square brackets give my year. Now just a simple understanding, we use the index number over here in list or tuples to delete an element, but we can't use index, and for index we use a key value. So this is how it works. So simple. All we have to do is just focus on how to do things. So over here I have deleted my year value. So now let's print my dictionary to check if I have done everything correct. So let me save this and click on run, and you could see the year has been deleted. Now this is all the functions we can do in dictionary, and we can also use the functions we implemented in list and tuples since they are mutable. So that's all about dictionary. Now let's talk about the range function. The range functions are used to access elements in sequential order in a list, tuple, array, or anything. They require three arguments, which are the start, stop, and step. Now, I guess you couldn't understand clearly, so let me quickly jump over to my code editor and explain you how it works. So now let me create another file called range.py, and over here, now first let me create a set. Say a equals 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 and 9. So this is my set, and if a situation arises that I have to print only these first 5 elements and regret other 4 elements, I could use the range function to do that. So say print of a. So this will allow me to print all the elements present in my list. But since I need only the first 5 elements, what I have to do is first find the index of the first 5 elements. So starting from 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So all I need is the 0th to 4th index value elements to be printed in my output. So let me give 0, which is the start value where the operation has to be started. So it will start printing from 1. So use semicolons to go to the next step, which is the stop. First we have to give the start value, then we have to give the stop value, which means where we have to stop. So I have to stop over here, which is the 4th index value. So if we have to stop in the 4th index value, we have to give an additional index, say 5. So if we give 5, it will decrement 1 from the stop value. So if you give 5, 1 will be deduced from it and it will stop at 4. So this is how the stop works. And now we have to give a step value. Step value is something that how many steps you have to proceed for the next function. So if I give 1, it will print next element to the first element. So if I give 2 here, it will jump 2 fields from here and it will go and print my third element. So that's how the step value works. So let me quickly save this file and click my run button, and you could see that my first 5 elements has been successfully printed. So let's try changing the step value to 2 and run it. You could see that a value has been skipped between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now hope you guys are clear with the start, stop and step function. And if I change this 5 to 4 and save this, you could see that only first 4 has been selected and 1 and 3 has been printed, since the step value has been changed from 1 to 2. Now this is how the range function works. So let's create another example. Say if we need to print all the odd numbers present between 1 to 10, we have to manually use the print statement to print all the numbers or increment it. So it will be several lines of code, but the help of the range function we could print it within 2 to 3 lines of code. So let me show you how it works. So let me print the odd numbers present between 1 and 20. To do that, let me create a for loop, since the range function works in the for loop. So for I in range. So first we have to create the start value. So the start value is 1, and you could see over here that first we have to give a start value, and next we have to give a stop value, and next we have to give a step value. So step value is optional, but if you have arise in a situation that you have to print the odd numbers, then step value will be essential in your code. Else giving the step value as 1 or not mentioning it will always be the same, since the default value of the step will be 1. So now over here the stop value would be 20, since I will be printing the odd numbers between 1 and 20, and 20 will never be an odd number, so I need not have to give it as 21. Hope you understand. And my step value would be 2, so that only the odd numbers present between 1 and 20 will be printed. So now I have to print my I. Now in this case, each time I takes the value in this range and it will be printed. Now this loop continues until the range function quits. So let me run this, and you could see that all the odd numbers have been printed between 1 and 20. Now another case is that you could see that I have used comma over here and colons over here. Now this is because this is a range function, and to separate the start, stop and step value you have to mention your commas. And this is not a range function, but is a slicing operation. And slicing is used to slice or take part of your list or tuples or array and give it to the output, as we did over here. We only took a part of our list and printed in our output. There are situations that you can only use your start value, or you can only use your stop value, or only use your step value. So let's check each and everything out. Now as you could see over here, I've used only the start value in this line, and I've used only the stop value in this line, and I've used only the step value in this line. As you could see, this is the start value with a colon, and if you start with a colon and give a value, it will automatically take it as stop value, and if you use double colon, the compiler would take it as the step value. So if you watch it carefully, everything will display the whole set over here, and I have already run it, and you could see the whole set has been printed out 3 times. Now you could also play with these numbers, but just be careful. And that's all about the range function. Now let's head over to an important topic in Python, which is called as function. So a function is a block of code which runs only when it is called. Why use function? We use function because we can call it several times in various parts of our code. Say if you need to create a situation that a programmer should add two numbers and give you the output. The programmer does it with 2 or 3 lines, and you'll get your output eventually. But say if a situation arises, like a user wants to give two numbers and get the output in, say, various parts of your code. Say example, he wants to give two numbers and get the output now, and later after 5 minutes he gives another two numbers and he needs the output. The programmer has to type the code several times. So instead of that, you could always create a function and call it wherever you need it. So that's how the function works. You can pass the data, which is known as parameters, into your function. We'll learn about arguments and parameters in upcoming sessions. A function can return data as a result. So that's what I already said you before. You can get your two numbers and add it, or you can do whatever operation you need and provide your result at any part of your code, which is the work of this function. And in Python, a function is defined using the def keyword. So now let's talk about parameters and their uses. So parameters are specified after the function name. So we use the def keyword and then we give a function name, and within the parenthesis we give the parameters we need. We can add as many arguments or parameters we want with separation comma. And now let's talk about arguments. So information can be passed into functions as arguments. So passing the information will be in our body code. So you will get to know about it when we start using our code editor to code in functions. An argument is the value that is sent to the function when it is called. So argument sends the value and it is being received by the parameter. So now let's quickly head to our code editor and check out how it works. So now let me create a new file named function.py. So first let me create a simple function for you to understand, and later on I will be dealing with arguments and parameters and many more operations together to functions. So first let me create a simple function, say def, and the name of my function will be my function. And yeah, so over here let me just use a simple statement, print. So you programmers, so this is my function. Now my function has been created. Now we have to just call a function so that this line of code will be implemented. So to do that, we have to call a function with the name of a function. So now let me save this, and before I start running it, let me just delete it. And click on run again. As you could see that the statement within the print has been displayed in the output. Now this is how the function works, starting with the def keyword to define a function, and then the function name over here followed with a parenthesis. So now let's deal with parameters and arguments. So parameters are placed over here and arguments are placed over here. So arguments are the ones which sends the value to the function, and parameter, which will be placed over here, gets the value or receive the value from the arguments and act with the function accordingly. So an example will say that now let's create a function which sums up two numbers and provide you the output. So let my name of the function be as it is, it doesn't matter. So let me just create two parameters, a random variable x and y, and let me remove this line. And what this function does is it returns x plus y. So now over here in the calling line, let me just use the print statement, because it just returns the value but it won't be displayed in the output. So if you need to display in the output, you have to use the print statement in the calling line, else you can always use the print statement in this line too. So now let me give the value for my parameters. So x gets the value of say 2 and my y gets the value of say 10. Now let me save my file, click on run. You could see 12 has been printed over here. Now this is how parameters and arguments work in the function. Now if the user says, no, I'm totally fed up of giving two inputs each and every time, my y value will also always be the same as 10. I just have to change the x value each time. So create a code for me like that. All we have to do is use the default argument. So to use that, let's head over here and assign a default value to this parameter y, which is 10, and remove the value 10 over here. Now you could see that I have only added or given one input to the argument. So this will be assigned to the x parameter value. So now let me save this file and run this. You could see the same output has been printed. So this is how the default argument comes in handy. So let's say there's a situation arises and you have to change the value of y only at a specific part of the code. You can also do this. So print my function of say 3 and 10. So only when the x value becomes 3, the y value, let me give it as 20. So when the x value becomes 3, the value of y changes from 10 to 20, else the default value will still be implicit. So now let me save this and run. You could see that the first line, which is the third line, it's being printed as 2 plus 10, which is 12. But on this line you could see that the value of y has been changed from 10 to 20. So the output has been changed from 12 to 23, and this is how the default argument comes in handy. Now let's try adding a list to our function. For that, let the name of my function be as it is and change the parameter to food. So over here, let me change my code. Say, let's use a for loop for x in food, and let me print the x. Now over here, let me create a list. So apples, banana, and cherry. So it's time to call my function. So it's my function of, say, food. So let me save this and click on run. You could see that x takes the value of each element present in the list, and for each time the x gets incremented, the value changes from apples to banana and cherry, and that is being displayed over here. Now let's talk about the recursion function. So we know that a function can call other functions, which is possible to do, but if a function calls itself multiple number of times, it's called as recursion function. So let's take a look at an example so that we can understand it clearly. So let me remove this code and create a function named as factorial, and your guess is correct. We are going to create a program with a function for creating or finding the factorial of a number. So my parameter would be x, and let's give the condition if x equals 1, then return 1, else return x into factorial, which is the function name, x minus 1. So now let me give the value of x. So value of x would be, say, 3, and let me print the function, or it's time to call my function. So factorial of x. So now let me save this and click on run. You could see the factorial of 3 is 6, and that's what is printed over here. Now before we look into the code and what's happening inside the code, you have to know the advantage and disadvantages of recursion. Let me first state out the advantages. Recursion makes the code look clean and elegant, and it is used to reduce the size of the code. But the disadvantages is that it's hard to follow and it occupies a lot of memory and time, and it is very hard to debug a recursion function. So let's know what's happening in the code. At first, the value 3 enters the function and gets inside the else block. In there it computes as 3 cross 2, and the value 2 is our new x value, which will again get inside the else block. This will happen until the value becomes 1, that is called as the base condition. All recursion function should have a base condition, else the loop will continue to flow for an infinite time. Let me tell you guys that the max depth of the recursion function is 1000, and when it crosses the 1000 it shows you the error, and it is not acceptable to have a code without a base condition. And that's all for the recursion function. Apart from recursion functions, we can also create nested functions, which means a function inside a function, and that's called as nested function. And now let's know how to do that. So for that, let me just remove this code and create a function name. So what this function does is it just prints hi, and now inside this function, which is called as main function, let me create another function. So def, or let me just rename this for a clear understanding purpose, main func, and this is sub function 1. And what it does is it prints out something. So let me name apple, and now let me create another function too. So it would be sub function 2. Sorry. Now this will print me some random characters. So since I've seen this thing here, let me type as O. So since it's a nested function, we cannot call this function separately outside, like how we used to call the main function. So we can call these two sub functions only inside this main function. So to do that, say if I need to call the second function at first, followed by the first sub function, what I need to do is sub function 2 and then sub function 1. Now getting outside of my function and calling my main function. So let me save this and click on run. You could see that hi is being printed first, which is the print statement of my main function, and then since I called the second sub function, the bool has been printed next to hi and apple is being printed at last. And this is how the nested function works in Python. So let's talk about scope of variables. Scope of variables are used to access variables in specific places of our program based on the condition. There are two scopes of variables, namely the global scope and the local scope. So let me quickly jump to the code editor and explain you about the difference between the global and local scope. So let's create a new folder naming scope.py, and let me create a function, say def sum, and this function will return the sum of two numbers. So return x plus y. So now let me use the print statement to call the function. So here you could see that the value of x and y has not been mentioned. So let's mention it. So let me give the value of x in the global place. So x equals 10. So the x is in global place. That means the x can be assigned or x can be called at the whole code. And let me give the value of y as 10 but in local. So y equals say 5. Now this is local because this is given inside a function and this can be accessible only within this function sum. But the value x can be accessible throughout our entire program. So now let me save this file and click on run. You could see that 15 has been printed over here. Now to check whether x is global or not, let me use the print statement to print x and print y. So now when I hit on run, you could see that 10 is being printed, which is the x. It's printed because it's in global variable. That means the value of x can be accessible throughout the program. But while printing the y, there seems to be an error in line 7. That is this line. And the error is because y is not defined. Because y is a local variable and y can be accessed only at these three lines because the y is mentioned within the function. So that is the difference between the global and local variable. Now it's time to learn about file handling in Python. As the name implies, file handling is used to create or work on a file without creating it and working on it manually. So on file handling, you have to remember the CRUD operation. The C present in CRUD is for creating, which means we can use it to create a new file. And R resembles the reading, which is used to read contents present in a file. And U resembles updating, which is used to update contents in a file. And D resembles the deleting of a file or contents present in the file. Now let's learn about the various modes present in file handling. The first one is the read mode. The R is used as the read mode, which means you can use this mode to read the contents in the file. And W is used to write contents in your file. And A is used to append content in a file. You have already learned about append in list and tuples. They are used to add the content to the end of our list or tuple. So it's the same in the file. Writing contents in append mode adds your content to the end of your file. The next is X, and we use it to create a new file. And next is T, which is used to read the file when it is in text mode. And B is used to read a file when it is in binary mode. Now let's head back to our code editor and learn about these various modes. Now let me create a new file named file handling. Now let's try creating a new file. For that, all we have to do is f equals open. So here the f says that it's a file, and open function is used to open a file, and within this parenthesis we have to first mention the name of our file. So let me name my file as sample.txt, and now we have to give our mode. Since we are creating a new file, we have to use our X mode, which is used for creation of a file. Now that we've opened a file, we have to write contents in our file. So for that, all we have to do is type in f.write, which is used to write contents in our file. So let me type in hello dear subscribers. Now that I have typed my line over here, let me close my file. It is mandatory to close a file when you open it. So now let's save this and click on run, or let me just delete this, and we couldn't run this program again since the file has been already created. If you check over here, you could see sample file created with the content we have given here. To show you how the output will be displayed, let me just delete this file, head back to our code editor and click on the run again. And this is how the output will be displayed on the screen, and the file has been created over here. You could see the text displayed. Now that we created a file, let me just show you the text present in the file to be displayed in the output panel. For that, we have to again open our file, but not in creation mode, but in read mode. So to do that, let me change this to R, and let me change this line to print. The print statement is the only way that we can use to show our output in our control panel. So now what we are going to do is file.r/f.read, which is used to read the contents present in our file. Now we have closed our file too. So let me save this and click on run. You could see the content of our file displayed in our output panel, and this is how the read mode works. Now if you want only the hello to be displayed in the output, you can use the read line function instead of read. So the read line function, and you could see that hello is a 5 alphabetic word. So let me type in 5. So now after I save this and click on run, you could see the word hello printed over here. Now this is how we can part our output. We can part our contents present in our file and display it in our output. Now let's try the append mode. So what I'm gonna do is append some more text to my sample.txt file and use the read mode to show this in the output. So now let me open this file again. So f equals open and type in the name of my file in the append mode. Now I'm going to write some more content to my file. So let me type now my file has more content. You could see I've given some gap over here for my text, and that's because if we use the append mode, it will start to display from here. So the output would be like this. So to avoid that spacing error, I've given a gap over here. So let me now close this. Now I'm again gonna open my file. So that's sample.txt, and now I'll be opening it in read mode, and let me use the print statement to display the output. And now it's time to close my file. So in order to avoid any error, let me just delete this file and save this and click on run. You could see the output displayed over here, and even the file has been created, and you could see the gap over here. Now this is how the append keyword works in file handling. So now the final part is to delete a file in file handling. So now that we've created a file and appended it and read the contents in the file, now it's time to delete a file. So to delete a file, let me first remove all these lines. Okay, now we have to import a module. A module is something that we are going to import a built-in library function, a built-in function. A function is what we've already learned. It is used to do a specific task in our code, and all the functions that we've discussed earlier are user-defined functions, which means we programmers are used to create or specify the task of that function, but built-in functions are the functions which are pre-built by the creator of Python. So we are going to import one such built-in function module, which is the OS module. So we are going to import our OS module, and now we are going to type os.remove, which is used to remove the file from our keyboard. So let me type the name of my file. It's sample.txt. You could see the file over here. Now I'm going to save this and click on run. And you could see the file has been disappeared from this list and even from my folder. And that's how the OS module works in file handling section. And that's it about file handling. Now let's talk about lambda functions. What are lambda functions? They are anonymous or nameless functions. They are used only once, and they are also known as throwaway functions since they are used only once. They are used to reduce the size of our code. Now that we've learned about lambda function, let's head back to our code editor and work with them. Now let me create a new file named lambda function.py. Here I will be creating another file, normal function.py. Now this is to show you the difference between a normal function and a lambda function. So let me open another panel, and I will be working with the normal function over here, and I will be working with the lambda function over here. Now let's talk about the scenario. Say let's build a normal function and a lambda function which is used to give the sum of two numbers. So now first let's work with the normal function. So we know how to do it. So def say sum, let me give two arguments a and b. This will return me a plus b. So now let's call the function. So let me use print, since I've used the return keyword over here, and name of my function. Let's say I need the sum of 10 and 50. So now let's save this file and click on run. You could see the 60 has been printed over here in the output, and this is the output of a normal function. So now let's take the same scenario and work with the lambda function. So now to work with lambda function, we have to use our lambda keyword and the two arguments a comma b, and the work this function would be doing is give me a plus b. And an important note is that the lambda function needs a variable to store the value. So let me give the variable as x. So now what we have to do is use our print statement to print the value x of, let me give the same value as 10 and 50. Now once we save this and click on run, you could see the 60 printed over here, and this is our lambda function. Now this is how we use our lambda function and normal function. As you could see, the same scenario and different sets of lines. The lambda function is used to reduce the size of a code but can be used only once, whereas the normal function could be as a bigger code but can be used in multiple places of our entire code. And that is a major difference between a normal function and a lambda function. Let's see another example in lambda function to make ourselves clear in that topic. Now say we are getting a number and we want to display the output as the square of that number. So to do that, the changes we have to make in our lambda function is that we only need one argument. So let me have only a, and the function it will be doing is just give me a into a. And now say I need the square for 2. Now let me just save this and hit on run. You could see the square of 2 is 4, and that has been printed over here. Now this is how the lambda function works. First it needs a variable to store its value, followed by a lambda keyword and an argument with a colon, and we have to specify the function or the task of this function after the colon. And in the print statement we have to mention a variable name, and within parentheses you have to give the arguments or the value of the arguments. And this is how the lambda function works. If we create the same example in a normal function, say, let me remove this, f square a, this would return me a cross a, and square of 2. Now let me save this and hit on done. So you could see that the 4 has been printed over here. The main purpose of the lambda function is that it reduces the size of our code, and if we need a function and that function will be used only once in our entire program, then we can make use of our lambda function. Hope you guys remember about nested functions. In that case, we can also use our lambda function inside our normal function, and I will be showing you how to do that in the next set of videos. So now let's learn how to use a lambda function inside a normal function. For that I will be using the normal function file. So first let me just remove this code and create a new function named my function and an argument n. This will return lambda a cross n, which means that the a is the argument of lambda function and n is the argument of the main function. So while getting the value, we have to get the value for n and even for a. So now you know that a lambda function needs a variable to store its value. So to do that, let me create a variable named, say, x, and this will store the value of my function. The value for it is, say, 2, and now I have to call my function. So print x of, say, 11, which means that this 2 is the value of n and this 11 is the value of a. Now let me save this file and click on run. You could see 22 printed over here in the output, and this is one of the example how you use a lambda function inside a normal function. Say this is one of the method in nested functions. Now let's learn about map, filter and reduce functions in Python. These are some of the built-in functions which are used to perform various operations. First, let's learn about map function. So a map function creates an output list consisting of values which the function returns true. So if you create a function with a condition, and the values which pass the condition will be included in a separate list, and that is the use of map function. And the filter function does the same, but the difference between the map and filter function is that the map function returns true and false, which means it returns the Boolean form of the output, and filter returns the value that passes the condition, and those values will be present in the list. And the reduce function is used to return a single value from the list of iterables. Now let me quickly jump over to my code editor and show you guys how to work with map, filter and reduce function. Let me use the map, filter and reduce functions in the same file that we used before. So first let me remove these codes and let me also delete the output panel. Now it looks neat. First let's take a look about the map function. So I'll be creating a list and my list, and that will contain the values 1 to 6. Now let me use the map function and use my lambda function in this map function. So we can also use our normal function in the map function, and I will be showing you the difference to how to use in lambda and normal function. So variable say a, and the work that this function would be doing is so this will be showing me the values that pass this condition. So now I need to give my iterables, so that would be my list. So let me explain you again what this does. The task that this function does is that it will be showing me a list of values from this list that will not give me the answer as 2 when it's divided by 3. So now I have to give a variable which is used to store this value. So let me name it as p equals. So now let me print. So I would like to print the output in tuples. So tuple of p. Now let me save this and hit on run. You could see that I've already mentioned the map function is used to give the boolean values. So it gives true and false. Now you could see that only 6 divided by 3 would give me 2, and the value for that has become false and rest of those have been true. Now this is how we use the lambda function and the map function together. Now let's try using the map function in a normal function. But before that, let me open this. Let me remove this and let me paste this in here. And I'll be opening a new panel. And so now I'll be using the map function in my normal function. Now let's create a function, say map function. Now let me give an argument, say a. Now the work of this function, it will return those values which does not give me the output as 2 when the value is being divided by 3. So let's use an if. So if a divided by 3 does not give me 2, return a. Now let me use a variable x. Okay, so x equals map. Now over here we've used a lambda function. The same thing we have to do over here, but not our lambda function, but give our function name. So the name of my function would be map function, comma, the iterables. I've mentioned my list over here and I've just called my list here. Let me mention my list in here. So I'll be using the same list 6. Okay, now I'll be printing my x in the form of say set of x. So now let me save this file and click on run. You could see that the output is being displayed in a set with curly brackets, and first 5 digits has been passed the condition and the last has failed to pass the condition, and it's being displayed as none. And this is how you use the map function in a lambda function and a normal function, and it's the same way how you use the reduce and filter function too. So now let's use the filter function in both lambda and normal functions. So the condition we will be using over here is to print a list containing of numbers greater than 3. So for that, let me just increase the list 7, 8, 9 and 10. Over here too 7, 8, 9 and 10. So now that my list has been created in both the functions, let's change the condition over here. So a greater than or equal to 3, and I'll be printing it in a list. So now let's save this and click on run. Oh, sorry guys, let me change this to filter function, and now click on run. You could see that the list contains only digits greater than or equal to 3. The first 2 digits has failed to pass the condition, and so it did not get present in the output. And this is how the filter function works. The map function provides a boolean list with true or false values, and the filter function gives the output of the values which pass the condition. Now let me use the same condition in this normal function. So let me rename this as filter function, and here too, and even over here. And let me change the condition. If a greater than or equal to 3, return the value of a. Now this will be printed in say tuple. There's another method of showing it in tuple or list, that is, you could mention the type you need over here. So if I need a list, or say since I mentioned tuple, I'll be using tuple over here, and just close a bracket, and you need not have to mention it in the print statement. So now let me save this and click on run. You could see that the output has been displayed in tuple with the same digits present inside it. Now this is how you use the filter function in the lambda and normal function. Now that we've learnt about map and filter function, let's learn about reduce function. So before that, let me remove this code so that it looks neat. Okay, now before we learn about reduce function, we have to import some library functions in Python. So to do that, let me key in import functools, or say from functools import reduce, or there's another method, say from functools import star. These are the three methods by importing a library function. So here I'll be using this method. So let me just remove these two lines. So now that we imported a library function, let me give a variable say s. This will store the value of the reduce function. So reduce lambda a comma b. So let me talk about the scenario. Here the scenario is the reduce function will show me the output. This will add the digits present in a list. So it will give me a plus b. Now let me key in my list. Say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 6. Now let me print my s. Since the reduce function will give me only one output, we need not have to mention if it's a list or tuple or set or anything. So now let me hit on you could see 21 printed over here. Now let me tell you how it's being displayed. So first A gets the value of 1 and B gets the value of 2, and now it is being computed and 3 is being stored in A, and B gets the value of 3 and 6 is being stored in A, and so on. And this is how the 21 has been displayed in the output. Now let's take the same scenario and try implementing the reduce function in our normal function. So first let me import the functools. Now let me define a function. The name of my function will be a, and the arguments will be x and y. And now let me return x plus y. So let me take the same variable s and reduce the name of my function and the list. So 12, 14, 25, 67, 90. Now I'll be printing s. So now let me save this and hit on run. You could see 208 printed over here. And this is how we use the reduce function in lambda and normal function. For the filter and map function, we need not have to import any library functions, but for reduce, you have to import the functools function. Now in the next session, we will be discussing how to use filter within map, map within filter, and map and filter in reduce functions. Now let's see how to use filter function within map function. So for that, let's take this code out and use a variable c, and I'll be using the map function, and my filter function goes within my map function. So lambda with an argument a, and this returns me a plus a, and now I'll be using my filter function lambda b, and the work this will be doing is b greater than or equal to 4, and now is my iterables 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let me explain you this line of code. First, this filter function gets executed by the compiler. This is my iterables for the filter function. So each time b gets the value from this list, first it gets the value 1, which does not satisfy this condition, and as you could see, 4 and 5 satisfies this condition, and that will be my new iterable for my map function. So let me show this here. The new iterable for my map function would be 4 and 5, and these iterables goes to my map function, and first a gets the value of 4 and returns 4 plus 4 would be 8, and then it gets the value of 5 and returns 10. So first let me just print it out to show you how it works. So I'll be using the list. So now I'll just hit on run. You could see 8 and 10 printed over here, and this is one such method how we use the map function and the filter function together. Now let me demonstrate you how to use the filter function with the map function, or map function within our filter function. For that, let me just remove this and create another variable, say d. Use my filter function first, and now comes my lambda with an x, and the condition would be x greater than or equal to 4, and now it's time for my map function with lambda x. The condition for this is x plus x, and now is my iterables. So I'll be giving 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Now let me print it in a set. So let me explain you first before executing this code. As you know, this part of code will be executed first. So first x gets the value of 2 and it computes as 4. Let me just key in the new iterables over here. So first it will be 4, and next would be 6, and next would be 8, and next would be 10, and then it would be 12, and all those values in this list will be the iterables for this filter function, and you could see all the values will pass this condition, and hence all the values will be printed in the output in the form of set. So first let me save this and hit on run. You could see the values over here printed in set, and this is one such scenario how we use a map function within our filter function. Now with that being said, let me show you how to use map and filter function in reduce function. So for that, let me just remove this code, and all we know is to use the reduce function we have to import some library files. So from tools, import reduce. So now that we've imported our reduce library file, we are ready to go. So I'll be using the variable r equals reduce, use my lambda over here with two arguments, say x and y, which returns me x plus y. And now it's time for my map function. Lambda over here with an argument x, which returns me x plus x. And now for my filter function with lambda x, which returns me x is greater than or equal to 4. And now it's time for my intervals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. Now I'll be printing my R. Let me keep that, and you could see 44 printed over here. Now let me explain you the code. First, as we know, this part of the code will be executed first. So from this list, only 4, 5, 6 and 7 will be passing this condition. So those values would be the new iterable for the map part. So 4, 5, 6 and 7 added by itself would give me the new list as, say, 4 plus 4 is 8, 10, 12 and 14. And now these is my new iterables for my reduce function. And all we know is reduce function just gives us a single piece of output. So first 8 and 10 is being added, and the result of those, which is 18, is being added to 12, and 30 is being added to 14, and the final output is 44, and that is printed over here in the output. Now this is one such scenario how we use map, filter and reduce function together. So thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you grasped a knowledge about Python by now. Hit a like if you love it and share it with your friends who love to code. Don't forget to subscribe for the next level of Python, where we would be discussing about OOPS concept. We will also be discussing about how to use graphs in Python and draw shapes and many more cool stuffs like that. So stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe. Bye.